We've got conspiracy theorist right-wing YouTubers breaking into our daycares, demanding access to our children. We've got the President of the United States demonizing our Somali neighbors and wrongfully confiscating funds that Minnesotans rely on. It's disgusting and it's dangerous.
Major breaking political news out of St. Paul, Minneapolis, Minnesota. Tim Walz will not seek re-election as governor, and what a fall from grace this has been for him.
You can say that again. Minnesota, a state that used to be seen as calm, boring, and stable. But nowadays, we are in some political chaos. Governor Tim Walz just announced that he will not be running for re-election. Not next year, not ever again. This is not that big of a surprise considering how devastating this has been in the last couple of weeks. And obviously the reason isn't about spending more time with family. This isn't about burnout. This is about something way bigger. The massive fraud scandal, hundreds of millions of dollars, taxpayer money gone, perhaps billions of dollars gone. Most of it happening under his watch. Mind you, he was going for a third term. So this guy's been here for quite a while. So we're gonna talk about this. We're gonna talk about why Tim Walz dropping out really matters, why this scandal embarrassed the entire state, and we discuss how more people need to be quitting or facing some kind of charges, and why a lot of people owe some serious apologies to Nick Shirely. Let's get into it.
Well, good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. Like many Minnesotans, I have to tell you, I was glad to turn the page on 2025. It was an extraordinarily difficult year for our state, and it ended on a particularly sour note. For the last several years, an organized group of criminals have sought to take advantage of this state's generosity. And even as we make progress in the fight against the fraudsters, we now see an organized group of political actors seeking to take advantage of a crisis. I don't want to mince words here. Donald Trump and his allies in Washington and in St. Paul and online want to make our state a colder, meaner place. They want to poison our people against each other by attacking our neighbors. And ultimately, they want to take away much of what makes Minnesota the best place in the country to raise a family. They've already begun trying to withhold funds that were meant to help families afford child care. And they have no intention of stopping there. Make no mistake, we should be concerned about fraud in our state government. We cannot effectively deliver programs and services if we can't earn the public's trust. That's why over the past few years, we've made systemic changes in the way we do business. We've gone to the legislature time and time again to get more tools to combat fraud. We've fired people who weren't doing their jobs. We've seen people go to jail for stealing from our state. We've cut off whole streams of funding in partnership with the federal government, where we saw widespread criminal activity. We've put new locks on the doors of our remaining programs, and we've hired a new head of program integrity to make sure that those locks can't be broken. All across this state, Minnesotans are hard at work on this problem. Advocates, administrators.
Okay, it's really hard to continue to listen to what he's saying. I can't stand politicians. You messed up. The Nick Shirley video happened, what, maybe 2 weeks ago? So all these things that you implemented did not work. There's still people committing fraud. You have done little to nothing. Nick Shirley went to countless daycares. They weren't open or had no kids inside, or they were very hostile. What are you talking about? And then he's quitting. He can't get reelected again, right? He's dropping out. And the first thing he blames is Donald Trump. Politicians can never take accountability and say, it was me, I failed you, Minnesota. That's what he should be saying. But this is just embarrassing. That's why he's gone.
Investigators are on the front lines defending the integrity of our state's programs. And I want to give a very heartfelt thank you to all of them. There is more to do. A single taxpayer dollar wasted on fraud should be intolerable. And while there's a role to play for everyone, from the legislature to prosecutors to insurance companies to local and county government, the buck does stop with me. My administration has been taking fast, decisive action to solve this crisis. We'll win the fight against the fraudsters. But the political gamesmanship we're seeing from Republicans is only making that fight harder. We've got Republicans here in the state legislature playing hide and seek with potential whistleblowers. We've got conspiracy theorist right-wing YouTubers breaking into our daycares, demanding access to our children. We've got the President of the United States demonizing our Somali neighbors, and wrongfully confiscating funds that Minnesotans rely on. It's disgusting and it's dangerous. Republicans are playing politics with the future of this state. It's shameful, and I've said it before, and I will continue to say it. We welcome ideas from anyone, in any party, from any walk of life, who wants to help us continue to stay ahead of these criminals. And we welcome the involvement of the federal government. I am grateful to the career professionals at the U.S. Attorney's Office and the FBI who have been helping us fight this fight for years. But I cannot abide the actions of the political leadership in Washington. These opportunists are willing to hurt our people to score cheap points. They and their allies have no intention of helping us solve this problem, and every intention of trying to profit off of it. Which brings me to this. 2026 is an election year. Election years have a way of ramping up the politics at a time when we simply can't afford more of that in Minnesota. In September, I announced that I would seek a historic third term as Minnesota's governor, and I have every confidence that if I gave it my all, we would win the race. But as I reflect on this moment with my family and my team over the holidays, I came to the conclusion that I can't give a political campaign my all. Every minute that I spend defending my own political interest would be a minute I can't spend defending the people of Minnesota against the criminals who prey on our generosity and the cynics who want to prey on our differences. So I've decided to step out of this race, and I'll let others worry about the election while I focus on the work that's in front of me for the next year. I'm passing on this race with zero sadness and zero regret. I did not run for this job to have the job. I ran for the job to do the job. Minnesota faces enormous challenges this year, and I refuse to spend a single minute doing anything other than rising to meet this moment. Minnesota has always come first and always will. That's what I believe servant leadership demands of me. As an optimist, I'll hold out some hope that my friends on the other side of the aisle will consider what servant leadership demands of them in the moment. We can work together to combat against the criminals. We can work together to rebuild the public's trust and make our state stronger. But make no mistake about it, if Republicans continue down the path of abusing power, smearing entire communities, and running their own fraudulent game at the expense of Minnesotans, I will fight back with everything that I have.
All right, that's enough. I'm done listening. This guy is terrible. It's actually amazing he actually was able to become governor twice in any state in this country. It kind of shows the kind of people they're able to get in these kind of positions. He really doesn't have any real accountability on the fact that him and his staff and his administration allowed the fraud to continue. And this idea that he could try to blame Trump and Republicans and YouTubers for this collapse is pretty laughable. It's pretty laughable at this point.
And I think 98% of the people arrested are Somalis who are immigrants there in the state that were taking COVID funds and basically and Medicaid funds and stealing them from the American people under his watch or his lack of watch. And now remember, Kamala Harris chooses him as the vice presidential choice partly because he couldn't conceivably upstage her. She says in her book that she didn't want to go with Josh Shapiro of Pennsylvania, who because he was Jewish. She actually says this, okay? And then she goes with Tim Walz, and he was a disaster from beginning to end. He also has a lot of confidence in himself, but I think that it was very clear to him after he had some discussions over the weekend that he would lose. He was a drag on the Democratic Party nationally, and the best thing that he could have done for the party, actually, and probably for him and his family, is to take this action today, which is to decide not to run for re-election.
This man could have been the vice president. I mean, it's really, really embarrassing. And how there's other people that needs to have some accountability, but let's break it down. So he announced that he's not going to seek re-election. That's a big deal. This is a two-term governor. Like I said, this is someone who was expected to probably coast into another race, but instead he stepped aside. And the timing is not random. The decision comes while Minnesota is drowning in one of the largest welfare and pandemic fraud scandals in U.S. history. This isn't some small bookkeeping issue. This is not even about one bad actor. This is a systemic problem that blew up in everyone's face. And obviously, if you've been on this channel over the past couple of weeks, we've been talking about this. Investigators are uncovering massive fraud tied to state-run programs. Been going on for over 10 years. Programs are supposed to be helping kids. Programs are supposed to be helping the families. Programs meant to help people during COVID. Instead, they were used like ATMs, fake meal accounts, fake invoices, fake businesses, millions of dollars flowing out the door, mostly from the Somali community committing all of this fraud. I mean, nonprofits that claim to be feeding thousands of children, turns out that none of those meals ever existed. So obviously, federal prosecutors stepped in, indictments followed, and more than 90 people charged. And I think more people need to be charged. And the biggest question became, how did this go on for years? Here's where things got uncomfortable. Many of the fraud cases were tied to businesses and nonprofits connected to Minnesota's Somali community. That fact alone turned this into a political nightmare, because instead of asking the question, is there fraud? Too many people asked this question, how will this look? So the red flags were ignored and oversight completely failed. Critics say that state officials were too afraid to act, afraid of backlash, afraid of being labeled racist. While politicians hesitated, the taxpayer money kept disappearing.
Initial reporting suggests $1 billion has been stolen. Since then, that number's gone higher.
It's higher.
How high, we don't know where it ends.
I was reliably told that he was a great fraud fighter and that, in fact, the fraud was minimal or not happening. So I'm confused about how it suddenly became a fatal blow to his campaign. And I'm actually not confused, because the fact is that the numbers were gigantic. This is perhaps unprecedented amounts of fraud. And he does have to answer for it, because he was on watch the entire time. And I think it's unlikely, given the scale, that anyone who had power in the Democratic Party at this time, of which the Somali community that was engaged in this is a core constituency, didn't know about it, or at least turn a very blind eye to it.
It's reported that he met with Senator Amy Klobuchar over the weekend. And Senator Klobuchar has been trying from Washington, saying back home, you've got to get a handle on all of this. She is considering a run for governor. Perhaps they met and she let him know that he would lose in a primary to her.
I would say anyone who was in power in the state of Minnesota had to know that some of this was going on. Whistleblowers were being very upfront about it. Folks, as you see from New York Times reporting and elsewhere, said basically the 2020 mind virus kept us from pointing out that this was happening, because we were afraid, because it was happening in marginalized communities, we couldn't stop them without being called racist. That is a total abdication of duty. And she's a senator from that state, so she had duties as well.
And you just mentioned the accusation of racism, and that's pretty much what the message was out of Minnesota. Anybody who was pointing fingers at what was going on there, you were accused of being a racist. Well, now that cover has been blown.
Right, and some, in fact, who were accused of things either threatened to sue or sued, saying, hey, we're being discriminated against because you're noticing the fraud. But the numbers don't lie, and the numbers aren't racist, and the stats matter, and every single dollar that is not stewarded by those who are in charge of these programs is stolen from another Minnesota or federal taxpayer who could have used that dollar for honest means and for something productive instead of fraud.
But let's talk about, there's other people that need to face some kind of accountability. Keith Ellison, the Attorney General. There's leaked audio been circulating online, audio that people claim that shows enforcement being delayed, programs being protected, and warnings being brushed aside.
Well, but here's the thing. This is the first I'm really hearing about it. Okay. I'm telling you, this has not come to my attention until now, really. I'm very concerned about it. I don't run the agencies. Absolutely. Yeah. But let me just finish by saying, but often the agencies call on my lawyers to represent them. This has my attention. I'm extremely frustrated by it, but we are in the middle of a battle with the agencies now. And I can tell you this, Walz agrees with me that this piddly, stupid stuff running small people out of business is terrible. Just getting the question, just getting the inquiry from the AG is sometimes enough to make people knock it off. But he knows that there's a lot of unfair, discriminatory stuff going on with East African businesses. I know it. These department heads like, Julie Herbstead now know that we know it. And she says, we're gonna stop doing it. But I don't believe it until you tell me they've stopped doing it. Well, brother, let me just tell you this. Of course I'm here to help, but we're all in this together. Right, you see what I'm saying? Let's go fight these people. Money is freedom. So
Now, not every leak online is verified, especially with AI nowadays, but this looks pretty legitimate. And what's really legitimate is the public trust is gone between, obviously, the governor and the attorney general. He needs to resign as well. People believe that the system protected itself instead of protecting the taxpayers. And that belief is toxic in an election year. But let's talk about something else. Before the indictment, before the headlines, before Tim Walz dropped out, there was a guy getting dragged online, Nick Shirely. People called him a creep. People said that he was harassing daycares. People said he was racist. People said that he was doing partisan content. But they weren't asking if the fraud was real. They weren't asking who was allowed to talk about it. And that's the problem, because today, Tim Walz can't even run again. And suddenly, all that criticism looks real quiet right now. But let's talk about Nick Shirely. He wasn't the story. The fraud was. But a lot of people are so stuck in this Democrat versus Republican thinking, they stop thinking at all. No research, no patience, just tribal politics. And when you do that, regular people get hurt. There were people in Minnesota investigating this 10 years ago, and nothing happened. Fraud doesn't just hurt one party. It hurts taxpayers. It hurts families who actually need help. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter what you look like. Fraud is fraud. So now Minnesota politics are wide open. Democrats are scrambling. Republicans see blood in the water. Congressional hearings are coming. More indictments could follow. And Tim Walz, he's done. Not because he wanted to be, but because this scandal made him untouchable. This was a real problem, a massive one, and ignored for far too long. And today proves it. The truth doesn't care about politics. It doesn't care about your feelings. Eventually, it shows up anyway. And when it does, people fall, even governors. This is not going to be the end of it at all. More people need to be resigning for the epic collapse that they basically were in charge of. But let me know what you guys think about the story in the comments below. Thank you for taking time to watch this video, and I'll see you guys in the next video.